we'll do is we will do 45 minutes or whatever we have left until 5:45 to answer as many questions as we can. And then we'll have 15 minutes of open questions for all of our participants to ask. If the participants could put on their cameras just so that the panelists have people to talk to, that would be awesome. So we'll get started. Me and Kayla will be alternating the questions, just so you know. So I'll start with the first one, and it is, what is it like to be a woman working in tech? So your background, career path, challenges, lessons learned. And Jessica, you can start with this one.
Great. I love this question. It's such a great one to start with. I thought when I was actually probably in undergraduate, I actually never wanted to study any computer science. I had to, as part of a, sort of mandatory engineering curriculum, but that was the farthest thing I actually wanted to do. I liked, using computers and, but I didn't want to study computer science. I thought that was not what I wanted to do. I actually studied a path of like biomedical engineering, where I thought I could learn everything under the sun to kind of keep, myself interested, throughout studies. And, through that, I learned a lot of different lessons, and, I kind of want to share a couple of those. One of them is actually just endurance. So it's challenging, to figure out your path. And going, after undergraduate to a PhD program, it seemed like, you're just running a long marathon. And, one of those things is like, just embrace change and embrace the path that you may take is not always linear, and that's okay. So, one of the things that I just learned through my time, in both undergraduate and graduate is that things, you'll learn different things along the way. And every time you learn something new, that brings more information to what you can do. And then it's kind of like this iteration of yourself. And then you take that forward to your next thing. And then you don't know where you could go from that next thing to the next thing. I mean, I never thought I would be, at Nuance, as an undergraduate, so it's a very interesting part, which is really, you create your own destiny. You can pave your own path. Don't take what's written, because every single role and every single opportunity that I've taken is actually not what has been ever advertised, So all of the positions that I've had in different companies were all things that I just come sort of because of, what you did and what you want to do. So I think a lot of that is just around, sort of embracing change. And, as you see with like different job postings, don't just take those for what they are, but, know that you can network with different people and then learn from there where to go next. So I'll just share like one internship application that I did put in when I was an undergraduate. It was actually for like mechanical testing of sutures at Johnson & Johnson. So these are these, just doing instron testing, if you know that at all, if you're a mechanical engineer background. And I remember the hiring manager said, I have another opportunity with a chemist, if you want to explore. And that's totally transformed my whole path, because it was not even advertised position, enabled me to get this other opportunity. I then learned like I wanted to, study this as a career path, and then kind of launched to a whole different area. So it's just to consider, like, keep your eyes open, because there are some things that just happen like that. So yeah, anyway, just keep your eyes open and always, think about seizing those opportunities when you can.
Perfect, thank you. And on to Dima.
I don't know how to possibly top that, Jessica, but I'll give you a bit about my background. Similar to Jessica, I didn't know this about you, Jessica. I actually was torn between pre-med and engineering. I knew I wanted one or the other. I love both. And I think the key here is exploration. You do you, what fits you best. So I started out in pre-med. I did about a month, and then I realized, you know what? No, my heart really belongs in engineering. I prefer logic over memorization. And so I do have a Bachelor of Engineering, electrical telecom. And I didn't stop there, right? I kept exploring, you know, I didn't want to stick to one. I continued to get my project management with the PMP certification. I just got my mini MBA. You know, I go where my career path takes me and where I feel the most confident and the best version of myself. And career-wise, I've also moved laterally a lot. So I did start out in a technical role. Jessica, by the way, I think I applied for that Johnson & Johnson internship once upon a time, but I didn't end up there. So I did start with a more technical role, and then I started realizing, you know what, I like dealing with people more. So I moved into project management, and having that technical background really helped me kind of talk more with developers, with engineers, with architects, because I have that background. But at the same time, I wasn't necessarily working exactly in that technical field. So I toyed around with project management, product management, program management, and now I'm in customer success, which is where I finally found the perfect balance between having that technical knowledge to help me strategize and work with my customers to understand what is it that you're looking to do and how do I translate what you're trying to do into actual outcomes. And so I'm all for exploration. I'm all for continuing to learn, especially in the technical field. It's ever evolving. And so you need to keep up. And that's something that I personally thrive on. And I'm sure a lot of you do as well.
Yeah, it's actually really funny that you applied for the same job that that made me laugh. And on to Mariem.
Sure. Yeah. So on my end, I actually started out with a Bachelor of Arts, so not at all related to science and literature and linguistics. And while studying linguistics, I quickly developed this very strong passion for language. And I had this vision and this drive to develop a holistic understanding of language from many different points of view. And so I quickly realized that to do that, I needed to go into scientific research. And so I decided to do a master's where I specialized in research on the cognitive science of language. And that meant that I had to quickly scale up my understanding of the scientific method, of concepts such as statistics, having no background in that at all. Then I specialized in neuroscience during my PhD, where I worked at the intersection of biomedical engineering, clinical neuroscience, and cognitive science. And that whole journey was extremely challenging for me, as you might imagine. But what really kept me going is that vision and that passion, and thinking really of all these things like brain imaging techniques and statistics and all these things that I didn't really have a background of, in thinking about them just as tools to achieve my passion and my vision. So I think that's something that I found to be really helpful, to have something that you're really passionate about, a vision that you want to bring to life, and thinking about the different challenges that you encounter as really just a means to an end, or tools really. And that helps get that motivation to overcome that, acquire the knowledge that you don't have, acquire the expertise that you don't have. And finally, all of that, of course, led me to same passion for language led me eventually to Nuance, where I wanted to explore language more from the perspective of technology, artificial intelligence, all that.
That's so cool. How many languages do you speak? Sorry.
I speak 3 fluently, and for others as
Wow.
like a basic level.
Okay, our next question. Thank you guys for your answers for the first questions. So cool to hear about all your stories. Our next question is how to get into the tech industry as a person who's not come from a technical background. So we will start with Marceline.
Thanks for having me. I think I'm going to echo some of what Jessica said. The way that I got into the tech industry feels like a pretty windy road, but now that I hear that more people had some background in science, maybe it was a bit more direct than I realized. I was a biology chemistry major. I started off, my initial university study was for pre-med, and then I decided I wanted to focus around biology and chemistry with a minor in environmental science. So I love what Dima had to say about exploration. I think there's a curiosity that's required for technical work, at least to keep it interesting. And I think the idea that you have a very specific or straight line way to get into tech is probably false from my personal experience. I started in a PhD program for marine biology, and my husband likes to joke that I quit that program when they had me on a boat at 3 a.m. trawling for shrimp. I decided that marine biology was not for me. And the closest sort of big business advertised near our house was an IBM call center. And I just walked in there and I was curious about, what they were doing in there, and talked to a couple of people. And it came down to an interview, and the hiring person said, I think you do really well on the phone, and as long as you're comfortable being resourceful and asking your neighbors when you don't know the answer to a question, I think you could be a tech support rep. I had never seen the inside of a computer. I didn't know more than running to the computer lab to finish my papers in college. But I think that resourcefulness tip is one that you could use for any angle to get into tech. And that was the kind of the seed of understanding how things work when it comes to technology, because I had to explain it to people whose technology wasn't working. So it's kind of a weird angle at which to come at the learning, but I think it's a thing where you have to start with your core competence and what lights you up. And I think the way to get into tech is to be curious, be open, be resourceful. I'm definitely not from a technical background from the perspective of computers specifically, but I think that if you have those key characteristics and interests, there are so many angles at which you could approach this.
Awesome, thank you. And Dima?
Although I do have a technical background, you definitely do not need to have one to get into the tech industry. There's a lot of the positions I think that were shared at the top of the call are not necessarily technical. There's a lot of adjacent type of roles that can kind of help you pique your curiosity and let's explore this role to see if I really want to be in tech. We have such roles as solutions marketing. You don't really need to have a technical background, but you need to, as Marceline said, explain to a non-tech person, what does this tech thing do and what are the benefits of this tech product or solution? And that's really important to have one foot in the technical know-how and another one in, I don't need to have a technical background. How do I explain to someone like my grandma what this product does? And then there's a lot of other roles like data analysts, business analysts, sales, design, and customer success. You don't necessarily need to start with that technical know-how, but if you're very interested in getting into the tech industry, there's a lot more roles out there now than ever before where that does not require you to have that technical background.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from Mariem.
Yeah, so as my colleagues mentioned, you definitely don't need to be a developer or a software engineer to get into tech, which is what I used to always think before coming to Nuance. But I would say that, as Dima mentioned, there are so many roles that don't require that level of expertise or, knowledge in that is technical, like UX researcher, customer success, all those fields. But even for more technical roles, so for example, when I got my speech science internship, which is more of a technical role, I was asked about my coding skills, and I said that they were very minimal, but despite that, I was able to get the job, because I think that ultimately the tech industry is about innovation, and innovation is about coming up with creative solutions to very complex problems. So if you are someone who is creative, someone who is passionate about solving problems, I think that you can definitely be a good fit in the tech industry. in whatever role you choose. And I mean, if you choose that you want to have a more technical role, like developer, data scientist, then you can definitely build those skills, as long as you have that basis of having an innovative mindset, and being passionate about whatever problem that the company is working on.
That's very reassuring, I'm sure, for most of us. So the next question is, how has the industry changed for women? Jessica?
Yeah, so I love this question too, because I feel like there are some parts that have changed for women, and then there's some parts that have not changed for women, right? So if you look at the stats of, how many women are actually in tech, every time I look at the stats, like even for a large company like Microsoft, it's only like 25%, and that's across all functions. And so there's always a distribution. As you go to the developers, very small percentage in women. You go to other functions, maybe larger percentage. So in that sense, we have so much more to do in terms of, bringing more women to the industry. But, what I think is so great about how it has changed is that there are so many more conversations being had, and that are more real, that resonate as far as what it is for women in tech. What does that mean? It used to mean like we have to be equal, or we have to be like, we have to operate like how, our male equivalents are in tech. But now it's really a lot of nurturing around, empowerment, across like the diversity of all folks. And so it's really changed the conversation of like, what are the relevant topics and the discussions that we are having in different groups. And so it's really nice to have networking sessions like this, and then other, affinity groups to really help, sort of balance and sort of navigate through the challenges of, I think, in general, working in 2022. So, I would say like, I had attended like a women's conference, like maybe 10 years ago. And, the topics that I heard 10 years ago and what they were focusing on like, what more like about your fashion and sort of how you should be prepared for your day at work versus like, what is the frank conversations and, dealing with conflict, in this other way, in the present day. So I think definitely conversations have shifted. I just think like as much as we can help to support each other, and then also the younger generation in terms of the interest in tech will be even more, great for, the future.
That was a great answer. Thank you. And Marceline?
So this question for me is always a bit challenging because I have to balance, being a woman in tech and my thoughts around what may be some kind of conventionally assigned female characteristics, and saying that, yes, things have definitely changed. It's encouraging to me to see what has changed, but it also makes me impatient for more change. I think the thing I've noticed probably more recently is, to Jessica's point, our overall percentages are still low as a representative group, but I've seen the roles that women play in tech companies shift quite a bit. I feel like there was a time, I won't spill my age, but there was definitely a time where women were almost automatically relegated to roles in HR and administrative assistants and support roles. I would just kind of lump it into these support roles where decision-making and hiring and executive level positions were, especially in tech, always occupied by men. So I have seen those changes. I've seen the leadership echelon in Nuance in particular contain a lot more women. I've worked on teams that are almost all female presenting, or with a couple males thrown in there. For example, I worked in our user interface design group, and from leadership on down, it was women who were quite comfortable in their technical roles and their design roles. So I think the way that it's changed is that we are not presumed to be in support roles anymore, but I almost don't want to give all the credit to the industry, so to speak, I think what's happening is I've seen women using some attitudes and approaches that maybe are more common amongst groups of women. So networking and collaboration and nurturing and bringing some of that kind of natural instinct into the workplace for the betterment of all. I think that's something that I've definitely witnessed. And I think that comes from feeling empowered and seeing yourself represented in the decision-making levels of a company.
Thank you so much. And the next one.
Yeah, our next question is, what has your experience taught you about the value of a diverse team and an inclusive work environment? So we'll start with Mariem.
Yeah. So I joined Nuance over a little bit over a year ago, and before that I was in academia. And I have to say that one of the things that really attracted me to Nuance is its reputation for its culture. And I gotta say that they absolutely did not disappoint, especially help productivity, and that when it's missing, then it's going to be extremely detrimental. So
yeah, totally. Awesome. Thank you. And Marceline?
So I feel like I have a great benefit in that wherever I show up, I'm introducing a level of diversity to that group, to that room, to that conversation. And I think the value that I have seen from that is it makes me want to look for it or encourage it in any environment that I come into. I would totally second what Mariem said about how well represented many groups are within Nuance. And I think the value that I have seen it add to teams in particular is there's a relief in not having to bring all the ideas yourself, and just knowing that with enough voices in a conversation, you're probably going to get a really full picture. You're going to get people bringing their own lived experience, their work experience, and their own voice to something, and it's just going to be richer because of it. That's what I've seen happen in that kind of environment.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
awesome. Thank you guys.
As for the next question, what is the greatest risk challenge you took, Jessica?
So many, but I will say, like, I probably stepping out of my domain. I remember my first job out of grad school was actually to be a chemist for Hewlett Packard, and Hewlett Packard's a huge company, right? But actually, the group I was in really lived the HP way. If you've ever heard of that, from the founders of Bill and Dave and the rules of the garage. But it was a great place to be a young employee and to really like have sort of a playground and tech. And like that's what's so cool about tech, is that like people are just really keen on just exploring and creating new ideas. So I had all kinds of opportunities to collaborate with folks on projects. And at the time, I just had more time to burn, to try different things, do side projects that weren't really assigned to me, but I just had the liberty to do that. And so I really took that opportunity to do that and try exploring. I started thinking like software and tech, software is the future, like I think like chemistry, I'm okay if I can step out of the lab, but software, like I felt like I need to be there, and I just wanted to be there. And so I remember my manager at the time, he was a PhD chemist, and he was like, are you sure you want to go on, completely step out of, because I was probably, if I chose that path, I could have been the, director of that, laboratory, and sort of kind of continue on that vein of technical chemist, sort of leadership route. But because I had stepped, towards like sort of projects that were software oriented, you know, it was going to be a completely new venture, and I really didn't know too much. I mean, I tried to do some like Python 101, you know, kind of, but I could never be as good as any like coder or anything. So, and I just said, you know, this is what I want to do. And I think, yeah, this is what I want to do. I like connecting, you know, on these kinds of projects with, you know, developers and the business folks. And so I just, you know, went on that limb. And I think it was a great payoff in the sense of, you know, once you do it one time, you're not afraid to do it again and then again and again. You know, sometimes you think like, I could never add another thing on my plate. But then you're asked, or somebody, you know, there's something comes up, and then you're like, you know what, that sounds like a really great idea. Like, let me try it out. And I think that's what makes it so exciting and, you know, I don't know, worth it. Perfect, thank you. And Marceline, your thoughts?
I think my greatest risk is a combination of professional and personal. So in short, I moved out of what were traditionally service roles. So once I was already in the tech industry, I did a lot of sales support roles and design work. So you're pretty much behind the scenes, you're given a set of requirements, you're marching to you know, a set list of to-do items, and you can really show your value by checking off those items. And my great risk was to say, I think I want to be the person selling these solutions. So I moved to what's affectionately called the dark side and became a salesperson selling directly into accounts and taking on a quota, carrying the bag, as they say, and having to meet that quota, exceed that quota based on my creativity, timing, luck, customer relationships, and no one to hide behind any longer was a pretty big risk. And I think that I was lucky in having good mentors and having enough exposure from my service and support work to understand deal dynamics and things like that. But the risk is always great when the earning is squarely on your shoulders. And personally, that translated into me saying, I'm going to make this career leap. And I asked my husband, who had been working a lot longer than me, to step back from his career and stay home and homeschool our children and be the stay-at-home parent. And so that was a risk in saying, I think I can do this. But in order to do it and kind of keep to our goals, I also need you to take a risk and trust me to go give this a shot. So it's scary, like any change. But I firmly believe that the level of risk you often take, especially when you're betting on yourself, it's proportionate to the reward that you get from it.
Thank you, that was very inspiring. And Mariem?
My biggest challenge would have to be the core project, the research project that I worked on during my PhD, which was a study that focused on validating a very advanced and new brain imaging technology. And that project basically involved me having to understand very advanced physics concepts, concepts of neurobiology, working with biomedical engineers and understanding how they build their imaging pipelines, and really acquire this very, very deep knowledge to be able not only to lead the project and collaborate with the team, but also solve problems when I encountered them. And that also required acquiring some skills in programming as well. And so the way I always talk about this is that I broke my brain and rewired it 1,000 times. And it was both a very painful experience, but also very rewarding and very mind expanding. And it even changed the way I think about problems. I look at things, and whenever I encounter challenges today, I think back to that time and I tell myself, well, if you were able to get through that and to actually get that work across the finish line, finish it, publish it, finish your thesis and defend it, then you can learn and take on anything. So
Thank you guys. This is all super interesting to hear. So our next question, somewhat similar maybe, is as a woman, have you had to make sacrifices for your career? So we'll start with Dima.
I want us to steer away from the word sacrifice. I wouldn't harp on the word sacrifice. What you're doing is you're making the best choice for you, for yourself, for your family. Was it all rainbows and unicorns? Of course it wasn't. Do you know how many spring breaks I had to skip because I had to study for a midterm? At one point I was doing internships in the summertime, so I didn't really have a summer break. And yes, you could call it a sacrifice, but I mean, at the end of the day, there was a reward at the end. Just like if you're training for a marathon, you're going to sacrifice, by losing a couple of hours of sleep in the morning because you want to train in the morning. But the reward is that you're completing and achieving this goal that you're setting for yourself and what works for you. And so, for me, even now, sometimes I have to work above and beyond, just to kind of gain more credibility with my peers and become the expert in the field. I'm very competitive, so I want to be top. I don't care if I'm competing against a male or a female. I wouldn't harp on the woman thing. Everybody has to kind of make that choice for yourself, for your career. And, at the end of the day, it's not specific to being a woman. It's who you want to be, what your goals are. And we should just continue to encourage each other and just go for it. Take that calculated risk and do whatever it is that you want to do. Don't call it a sacrifice. Just call it a choice. That's my beef with this.
Well, thank you. And Marceline?
Yeah, I can't disagree. That makes all the sense in the world to me, because it's about a mindset. So I think Dima said that really well. Your mindset about what you're doing and why turns that feeling of missing out into an asserted choice that you're making. I guess maybe I would look at this from the perspective of a personal view and where I have felt challenged or felt like I had to let something go. And it's really just ego, putting aside my ego in every learning moment that has come in this career stretch. There have been a lot of them. I've had to sacrifice a feeling of comfort because there was no room to be comfortable in order for me to learn something brand new. That's happened so many times. So yeah, that's what I would contribute there.
Very interesting. Thank you. The next question is, what do you think schools can do better to encourage women to pursue a career in tech? And Jessica?
Yeah, I think, sponsoring events like this, certainly, and internships completely, any sort of internship co-op opportunity, that is the entry to the real world. Being able to actually be able to network with real folks in the working world is such a important aspect as you're a student. It's like so hard to know, what does that even mean? Like the actual skills that we need, for the reason why there's such a gap for talent, in tech, is that the skill sets are not even skills that you ever learn in undergrad or grad. So I think that's one thing I feel like schools could even help better nurture, is start to really look at those internship profiles and job recs at the entry level and see what do we need to bone up on our curriculum, so that there can be a feeding pipeline into tech companies, because tech companies are hiring like crazy and we just don't have the talent that we're looking for across the universities. So I do think there probably could be more to be done there as far as collaborations with companies. I think the fact that like Nuance has the Mila partnership and the lab space in Montreal is a great opportunity for students to actually see working researchers, across different companies, kind of how do they actually communicate? What is their jargon? What are the things that they're keying in on? Because that's super interesting from a, student to sort of understand, and then start to even explore, even to know, hey, maybe I didn't actually want to be that discipline. Maybe I actually want to be this discipline. Oh, I didn't even know you do, like, what is business development even, do. And so I think encouraging that there's more to tech than just, one type of discipline, but then, seeing the diversity of all of that is actually quite interesting too. The other thing I would say about, when take the opportunity when you're a student, it's like you're not kind of like kid in a candy store, because there's everything you can pick up. If there's an opportunity to even just like sit in on a course, audit it, sometimes that might be some more hours, to a particular day, but you don't have that time again to do that. And I kind of like kick myself for not doing more of that, back in grad school. But I think that there are aspects of like business and communication that I wish I could even further explore as I was more focused on the engineering courses. But that's just something that I think is something that is an untapped resource that's just right there for you.
Those are some great points. Thank you. And Dima, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with everything Jessica said. I was privileged to actually work on a few internships before I officially graduated. Again, I guess the theme of my hour is exploration. That gave me the opportunity to explore the different roles at different types of companies, just to see what is it that I actually like doing. I mean, do I really want to sit down and code all day? And that's something I didn't really learn or know about as a part of my curriculum at school. I never thought that, once I graduated from engineering, I wasn't going to actually become an engineer and work on electrical and telecom. And that's something that, I would encourage schools to do more, is to showcase just the interdisciplinary roles that are out there. If you decide you want a degree in computer science, for example, that does not mean you're going to be sitting and coding all day. Not necessarily. There's just so many other doors and avenues for you to pursue, even after you kind of get your degree in something really techy. So, if there was a way to showcase that as a part of a curriculum, I think it's going to open up a lot more doors, and it's going to gain more interest from students who are contemplating being in tech, but think like I did when I said, I don't want to sit on a computer all day and write code. And that was my hesitation at the beginning, is I don't want to do that. So there's that false notion of what you think your job is going to be after you graduate. I wish there was a lot more about, here's what it's actually going to look like, and it's evolving. So whatever roles that were open 10 years ago, there's brand new roles now. The CSM role, the customer success management, that's a new role. If I had known that existed 15 years ago, without a heart, without even blinking, I would have said, yep, I'm definitely doing that. So that's where I would think we should kind of work on with schools.
Thank you so much. I really resonate with that as well. So it's very inspiring to hear. And now it's 5:45. So what we'll do is we'll transition into an open Q&A. So if people have questions, they can either type it in the chat or they can just unmute, and I'll stop sharing so we can see everyone's faces as well. And if no one has any questions, we'll go back to the ones in the slides.
Don't be shy.
I had a quick question. First of all, this panel has been really amazing. Like, the tech industry is totally scary to me right now. So hearing all of your guys' takes on everything has been kind of reassuring. I'm just curious if any of you have any specific advice for just dealing with being in a male-dominated industry, anything you've had to learn the hard way that you can pass on to the rest of us.
I'm going to jump in on this one right away. I think that there are things that we do outside of a work environment that are welcomed by our friends and family members, and just depending on whatever dynamic you have with people, it may work well. But some of the things I would say have been helpful are, don't start your questions or statements with an apology. This is 40+ years of experience, so I'm not trying to lecture anybody for myself. And never let someone presume what you know. Tell them what you know, share what you know, and then ask your question as needed. And don't underplay your gifts, your talents, your special skills. There's no reason for that. And if you've worked or been around males in an environment, you'll probably notice that they don't tend to do that. So there's no reason for us to take that on. A lot of what we do in tech is, it's a big deal, and it can feel scary and it can feel challenging. So I think there's no reason for us to dim our own light in those rooms when we get in them. We just participate like anyone else.
I would just add too, you know, just always have a good question to ask as well, you know, like fill in the void. That void is yours, you know, and that's like, just take those opportunities. Your heart might be racing. You don't want to actually talk, but have something good to say and just have it ready. You know, sometimes it can be, you know, the small things, just making a comment. Make sure that you're visible. Don't be invisible, because that's where I think, you know, it's often, if we, you know, are not, you know, it's for male or female, you know, if you're not speaking, you're not like actually, you know, you're not seen as, you know, prominent across the team. So I think that's a key part of, you know, just sort of, you know, making a presence in an atmosphere.
Thank you both for your wonderful answers. There's one a question in the chat, and it's, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? If anyone hasn't answered that.
Yeah, go ahead, Mariem.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I've experienced this a lot, and I still experience it. So with imposter syndrome, it's really, you have to push through it. It's okay to feel it and just accept those feelings and tell yourself that, embrace them. Like, as a worst case scenario, you feel, I don't know, stupid, you feel like you don't know what you're doing, you feel like you don't have the skills that you pretend to have, and you're just a fraud. Accept those and tell yourself, okay, what if I'm all of those things, but I'm still gonna try my best. I'm still gonna try to get this job done and see what happens. And then you get the job done, and then you start something else, and then you're gonna have those feelings again. Embrace them, just roll with it and say, okay, yeah, I'm a fraud. I'm still gonna give my best, right? And that's really, and also, as I said, a belief, like something that you believe in. I had something that I believed in, a vision I believed in. I said, just because I don't have these skills, I don't have this expertise, I don't have this or that, I'm still gonna try to work towards that vision no matter what.
Thank you so
I love
much.
that, Mariem. I'm going to have you call and remind me of that when I have to do something that makes me feel terrified. Surround yourself with people who remind you who you really are.
Gonna say that, and I have heard people kind of talk to me about it. I didn't even know there was a label to it until recently, and I go, you know what, this is something normal that everybody goes through. And I'm very data analytical. I just go back to, what have I accomplished so far, and why am I being stupid, and why am I thinking that I'm an imposter? Like, look at everything that I have done to prove myself to myself. I'm not an imposter. And you know, it's good to have you know, someone to support you as well. I have a few people in the company that support me when I'm feeling a little bit, you know, less confident than usual. They'd be like, Dima, stop being an idiot, you know, like, look at all these things you've done. Surround yourself with people who encourage you and lift you up. And that's, you know, something that we should all be doing with each other.
I completely agree. Is there any other questions in the chat, or if anybody wants to just speak up? If not, I have one. Oh yeah, go ahead.
So I'm going to graduate in May with a degree in psychology, but I'm looking to go into like software development, full stack development. So I'm just wondering, is it, in your years of experience, is it very uncommon to see that, like that non-technical at all degree And I guess I'm also a woman, so there's
Not at our company, if I can plug them. And not in some of the startup companies where I worked, where people were just motivated and wanted to be given work to do. And they would get the skills as they go if they needed to. And wherever they did their training and learning, at some point I've seen friends do that. So, have confidence that what you're studying now in some space, that when you move into technical work, that will show up in a way that helps you.
thank you.
I'd like to respond to Nishat's question.
Yeah, I was
know,
gonna read it.
yeah, it says, I'm a recent graduate of electrical engineering, in the process of job hunting right now. It's difficult. Advice not to feel anxious. The one thing that it took me a while to do is, if you think you're underqualified for a position, who cares? Apply anyway. The more you apply for, the more interviews you go through, the more you're going to gain confidence about, you know what, I felt comfortable answering this question versus I didn't feel very comfortable answering this question. It helps you kind of train until you find that dream job. Just continue. It's not, what's it going to hurt if you apply for a position that you're not qualified for? If you get through the first step of the interview, at the very least, think of it as practice. I'm practicing how to gain confidence in an interview, to speak to somebody, whether it's in person or over Zoom. Don't take anything as a failure. If you don't get the job, learn from it. What is it that was missing in this job position that I didn't have, and work on it? There was one job that I really wanted once upon a time that said I needed to know, I can't remember what it was, but there was something that I was missing, and they're like, oh, sorry, we need you to be an expert in this. So what I said was like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to go and study this thing so that the next time something like this opens up, I can add it on my resume and say, well, I have it. What's your, what else do you need me to do? So I know it's intimidating. What's the worst that's going to happen? Who cares if you fail? Do you know that person? No, you're never going to see them again. Just use it for practice.
Hi, I have a question. So I thank you for all of you guys for giving your insight. It was very insightful. What advice would you give to someone who wants to get their foot into the door within tech, especially from, I guess, a pre-med or science related background? I think maybe Jessica and Marceline, you can speak a bit more about this, but do you guys recommend any resources for those looking at a career in tech with this background?
Well, I think exploring the possible internship opportunities that are out there, right? You could certainly have a qualified set of, base skills that actually can apply to open internships today. So I would not overlook that. Don't be, just afraid of the different titles that they are. Just take a look and see, and also see if there's other coursework you might want to consider adding, even as like in an audit capacity, right? There's, what the great thing about computer science and tech is that everything is available, and so readily available. It doesn't even have to be through the university. You could take a short course, online, and get a chance to explore, is this an area that you want to go into? So it's completely possible, and there are just so many, I think, resources that are available. I could even see, sort of the internship opportunities at Nuance and what's available there. But, Nuance is actually in the healthcare space, and we actually have, engagements with, folks that have medical degrees that are working for Nuance in some capacity. So having the medical background and even, just even some, understanding of the healthcare space is something that companies in tech, in healthcare tech in particular, are looking for. So that's also another way and consideration of how you might explore a career in tech.
Yep, I totally agree. I have 2 children in college, 18 and a half and 20. And I'm going to tell you what I tell them. You are in this very unique time in your life where you have access to more people who have a similar experience to you than maybe you'll ever have again. And so every class that you take, every professor that you meet, every club that you join is an opportunity to talk to people who have similar goals to you overall, right? We want to make it out of university and eventually end up in a good job. So if you're thinking of a path towards a technology type career, there are probably clubs for it. They're probably in classes that are leading towards that path. You know, talk to those people or talk to the professors teaching those classes and just ask the question, you know, if I'm considering moving into this, where would you kind of steer me? Or what have you done? What are your plans for the summer? Who's giving out internships? Be resourceful, because you have this kind of unique, as close as you're going to be to people who have the same passion that you do for learning, and also the same goals, near-term goals. So that's what I would say. Just be resourceful and use the network that you have on campus right now.
Thank you so much.
There's a question, and it's, does Nuance have rotational new graduate programs? This might have to be our last question for the night. So
I don't know about new graduate programs. My first experience working directly with some of our interns that are brought in over spring and summer timeframe is that we had a couple of folks who had maybe a semester or a year left, and then they finished up at school and came to work at Nuance directly after. So I think I know that there is a path post-graduation to work at Nuance, and I know that we've had some become employees.
I was one of them, Marceline.
Yeah, see, yeah, it works out.
perfect. Thank you all so much for coming to our event. It was honestly so inspiring, and we really appreciate all of the advice that you've given us. So yeah, Sophia,
Yeah, definitely. So again, we've reached the end of our panel. We have like 1 minute. But yeah, honestly, just want to give a quick thank you to all of our members attending today, and as well as a really, really huge, enormous thank you to our incredible panelists. So Jessica, Dima, Mariem, and Marceline, thank you so much for coming today and really sharing your experience about growing in the tech industry as a woman with all of us, because it was really good, like so good. I'm really happy we have with the recording, because I'm going to definitely come back to it, and it's really amazing. So yeah, we hope you all enjoyed the event as much as we did, and we hope to see you again in the future.